No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken live episode number 49. And hallelujah, Nigel Farage finally took the very real concerns of the silenced majority about two-tier policing in the UK under Slippery Starmer direct to the PM in an extraordinary exchange today that resulted in boos from the Labour benches for the Reform UK leader.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we witnessed some extraordinary celebratory scenes outside Britain's prisons where, in some cases, serious career criminals were released. And this to make way for, yes, rioters, but equally those who've said unpleasant things on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. Does the Prime Minister understand? There is a growing feeling of anger in this country that we are living through two-tier policing and a two-tier justice system.
Well, they can boo all they like, but the balls from Farage to finally say what we're all thinking makes him the moral leader of the opposition. Father Calvin Robinson will analyse the communist hellscape Two Tier Keir is swiftly developing. But also coming up today, the MSM disgraced itself with the most biased and crooked presidential debate in history. Former Trump advisor and US independent broadcasting star Monica Crowley weighs in on what the Donald will do next, and I'll show you his hilarious reaction to Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris in a bonkers Instagram post. Plus, why is a judge's ruling in the bombshell court case about whether Prince Harry should be deported from the US being concealed? And why is Harry now directly emailing People magazine in a massive own goal, revealing him to be the Celebrity magazine's #1 snitch? Then in the uncancelled after show today, Father Calvin reveals why he's taking police action against one of his leftist critics. You can register to watch on our website right now, www.outspoken.live. Your support at just £5 a month gives you 30 minutes of extra content every single weekday. Let's go! Look, the fact you're watching this show means you're well aware of how dishonest, corrupt, and let's be honest, increasingly evil the MSM now is. As my guest today, Monica Crowley, posted on X last night during the US network ABC's travesty of a presidential debate, however much you hate the imperial media, it's not nearly enough. The woke Disney network was always going to go out of its way to destroy Donald Trump and boost Kamala Harris via the moderators, as ordered by the network's chief, Dana Walden, who just so happens to be Kamala's lifelong BFF. Yep, you cannot make this shit up. So, yeah, there they are. So this is just a section showing how David Muir and Lindsay Davis engaged in electoral interference by consistently fact-checking Trump, even when he was telling the truth, while allowing Kamala's lies to go unchecked.
Here tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
Migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI defrauded.
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no...
Oh, it went on and on and on, and Megyn Kelly was quite rightly bursting with rage.
I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted. I'm ashamed of those moderators at ABC News. They did exactly what their bosses wanted them to do. The person who runs ABC News is a close personal friend of Kamala Harris, that is responsible for Kamala Harris and her husband meeting. And they did Dana Walden's bidding tonight. It was 3 against 1 on that debate stage this evening. Hi, everyone.
Dave Rubin posted on X they didn't once ask about the assassination attempt on Trump nor the coup of Biden. They let Kamala lie about everything she said. They fact-checked Trump relentlessly. They should be exposed, mocked, and ultimately ignored. Riley Gaines added, not even 2 months ago, the former president was shot in the head in an assassination attempt and the moderators didn't bring it up once. You realise how deliberate and insane that is, right? And Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote, ABC is a disgrace. My phone is lighting up with non-stop messages about how extremely biased ABC is during this debate. Kamala Harris is VP right now. People can't afford anything right now. The border is out of control right now. But ABC is in attack mode against Trump. Now, Trump was pilloried by the MSM for revealing on stage how Haitian immigrants are eating pets in Ohio.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Now, if you don't believe Trump regarding the pet slaughter, have a little watch of this one. Don't worry, I promise you, not graphic.
What did you do? Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile with your teeth. Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with it.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
I'm gonna call the Humane Society, see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's deceased.
So it is happening. No wonder Trump was fuming on Fox and Friends this morning.
Economy. What's your reaction to why didn't the moderators correct her?
Because they're dishonest, and because I think ABC took a big hit last night. I mean, to be honest, they're a news organization. They have to be licensed to do it. They ought to take away their license for the way they did that. Bloodbath was referring to the economy. Everybody loved the term because as soon as they heard the word, it's sort of a vicious word. But referring to the economy, they have created an economy. Bloodbath was.
He's right. But look, the MSM tried these tricks in 2016 and failed. For the sake of the world, they must be ignored again. But for top US reaction, it's time for the uncancelled interview. And I'm delighted to be joined today by my friend, the prominent news analyst, host of the Monica Crowley podcast on Rumble, former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the Trump administration, and she interviewed Donald very recently for her brilliant show. Monica, I felt your fury last night. It was 3 against 1, but you still feel Trump came out on top?
I have to tell you, Dan, first of all, thank you for having me back. I adore you. I'm always so happy to be here.
I love having you.
Thank you, my friend. I was so infuriated by her unchecked lies. I mean, all Kamala Harris did last night was lie. It was one lie after another. The moderators were running cover for her. They were fact-checking the president, but they would not fact-check her. So she knew that she had this kind of cover from the so-called moderators, and she could lie with impunity. I was so infuriated, Dan, that I actually had to get up off my couch and start walking around the room. And I started doing I was listening, but I started to do different things like cleaning up, get organized for today, because I could feel my fury just rising.
Me too.
That they were allowing this woman to just spew lies, spew hoaxes that had long been debunked, all in an effort to discredit, delegitimize President Trump and try to create more momentum for her because, her momentum is essentially dissipated. The poll numbers are now moving back into President Trump's direction. She is tied, if not straight up leading Kamala Harris in all of the swing states and nationally. So she had to try to create this hour and a half where she had some sort of control over the situation, tried to needle him a little bit. And look, I don't think in the end it's going to work. I think most of the American people saw this for exactly what it was, which was a 3-on-1 pile-on. And, I made this comment today on my podcast, Dan, which is that he had to spend so much of his allotted time correcting all of her lies and untruths and parrying with the moderators that he could not actually use his time for much of anything else. He did the best he could in talking about his first term and his extraordinary successes, what he will do in a second term in order to build on those successes with a pro-growth economic agenda, enforcing the border, law and order, world peace, rebuilding the military. But he had limited time to actually advance his agenda and his policies because he had to spend so much time fixing everything she and the moderators said. That was a fundamental unfairness. It was totally unjust. And that's why I think most of the American people are attuned to this now from the imperial media. And that's why I think it's actually going to backfire on her and them and redound to President Trump's benefit.
Well, it's interesting because even a CNN poll has actually showed that Kamala has lost support in terms of who voters trust to handle the economy pre and post debate. So you'll see Trump there pre-debate 53%, going up to 55% post-debate, Kamala losing 2 points. So hopefully you are right. But of course, there was another elephant in the room, and it was made very clear by this moment today, because of course it is the anniversary of 9/11. Trump and Harris met for the second time, but Biden was there too. Watch this. And Monica, you've made the very pertinent point that yes, there they are shaking hands today. But are we just going to ignore that the sitting president doesn't know what planet he's on? And there was no mention of Biden last night.
It is incredible. I mean, President Trump tried to raise the fact that we've had a non-functioning president of the United States for the last 3.5 years. And he pointed to specific policies. He pointed to the fact that Kamala Harris, who's been in the second highest office in the land for all of that time, has lied and covered up the reality of his condition. He tried to make those points. But the visual today of the 9/11 memorial service downtown New York at the site of Ground Zero, Dan, where you have President Trump, Kamala Harris shaking hands. Okay, that's a nice moment, I guess. But we're all going to continue to ignore that the sitting president of the United States is still non-functioning. I mean, it was clear from today that he has no idea what planet he's on. And as we all know, dementia, unfortunately, is a progressive disease. So with every passing day, it gets worse, not better. And we still have months to go of this administration. So there's so much lack of accountability here that the United States of America has no president, and the vice president is just a sort of factory-made Democrat apparatchik who memorized a bunch of lines last night and read her script. You know, you could see, and I tweeted this early on in the debate. First of all, she was a nervous wreck early on, which just does not exactly inspire confidence, right? I mean, her voice was shaking, her hands were shaking, all understandable, but that's not what you want in an American commander-in-chief. She regained her confidence as the night went on, but you could see very early on, you could literally see her brain like an old Rolodex working to try to pull up the file that she was coached on, right? Like, oh, they're asking me about Afghanistan, pull up Afghanistan, and then just regurgitate what she was coached to say. Whereas, you know, and I spoke about this on my podcast today, Donald Trump's raw authenticity sometimes gets him into trouble, but it is his superpower. Because authenticity is not something you can fake or rig, unlike elections and debates. And Donald Trump sometimes, you know, gets ahead of himself on this, but at least he comes off as authentically standing for America's forgotten men and women. And he's got the full responsibility on his shoulders of bringing back the United States of America, and by extension, the West. That is a very heavy responsibility. He takes it very seriously, and he speaks from his heart. Whereas Kamala was a robot. She's only the next puppet being teed up by the system after Joe Biden, after Barack Obama. You know, the left, the system runs ghosts, Dan. And you and I talked about this last time. Kamala Harris last night was the ghost that the system has trained her to be.
Oh, yes, but the system was right behind her last night, which of course is why Taylor Swift, who some folk think is some type of CIA operative, immediately posted her endorsement as the quote-unquote crazy cat lady. Here's how Trump has responded in the last hour.
Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. What do you think?
Well, I actually like Mrs. I actually like Mrs. Mahomes much better, if you want to know the truth. She's a big Trump fan. I was not a Taylor Swift fan. It was just a question of time. She couldn't. You couldn't possibly endorse Biden. You look at Biden, you couldn't possibly endorse him. But she's a very liberal person. She seems to always endorse a Democrat, and she'll probably pay a price for it in the marketplace.
What did you make of this Swift post, Monica?
Well, look, Taylor Swift has made it clear over the course of her career that she does vote Democrat. She endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. So the endorsement is not a surprise. And I love President Trump's reaction to it. But I will say this, you know, it tells me that there's something more going on here, that Kamala Harris and her team actually don't believe that she did a very good job last night at all. Because the rumor was that they were holding back on the Taylor Swift endorsement until October. They wanted Taylor Swift to be the October surprise. And the fact that they released her endorsement, because Taylor Swift did not freelance this came as a coordinated effort with the Kamala Harris campaign. So they released it last night after the debate, when there's so much big debate coverage swamping the media coverage, right? And then they release it. She had it released in the middle of the night, which also makes no sense. So it tells me that they were desperate to try to change the narrative, that they were desperate to try to get an extra boost out of this because they realized she didn't perform all that well. There wasn't a single mention of policy from her in the entire 90 minutes, whereas Donald Trump was solely focused on policy, the economy, gas prices, inflation, grocery prices, the no borders policy that has created total chaos here, law and order, our cities in collapse, the issues of war and peace with Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Hamas and Iran and China. He was focused on the stuff that the American people really care about. She was focused on trying to get Trump. So I think afterwards they came running out. By the way, Donald Trump went into the spin room and gave a ton of interviews afterwards. She went and hid. That's number one. Number two, the Taylor Swift thing, there's also something interesting. Dan, you will recall in 2016, in October, Hillary Clinton had these massive concerts, including one a couple of nights before the election.
Beyonce and Katy Perry, the full works.
Beyonce, Jay-Z, Bruce Springsteen. Okay, so the rumor was that Taylor Swift, who was bringing her tour back to the US this fall, was going to bring Kamala on stage, offer her a big endorsement, then make a big spectacle out of it. So it makes no sense that Taylor Swift did this last night in coordination with the campaign in the middle of the night with this weird Instagram post. It tells me something is really off and things are not as rosy as the Kamala Harris campaign would like you to believe.
Very true. Very, very true. Now, breaking right now, Prince Harry has just exposed himself as People magazine's #1 source. I cannot believe that this guy, the Duke, could be this stupid, but then I actually remember everything else he's done over the past few years. So I'll take you through what he said in this cringeworthy email to People magazine, which is a slavish propaganda outfit for the Sussexes in just a moment. But Monica, firstly, your reaction. How crazy can this guy be? He's constantly moaning about the tabloid media, and now he's just revealing that he's the #1 source for People magazine. He emails People magazine. Madness.
It's total madness. Last time I was with you, Dan, I confessed that I am obsessed with Harry and Meghan gossip. And this is how I escape the reality of the craziness of the world. I crawl into bed. I follow all of these Instagram and Twitter accounts with the latest gossip on the two of them. You know, this goes all the way back to Princess Diana and Prince Charles when they got married. 1981, I was a very little girl. I got up out of bed in the United States at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch that wedding. And when Princess Diana died, I wept with the rest of the world, and certainly with all of you in Great Britain. I feel a very strong connection to the royal family and, you know, to Prince William and to Prince Harry. And I've loved watching them grow up into young men and now middle-aged men, right? So I have been absolutely appalled that Prince Harry has been so much of a dope to marry this toxic nightmare. And I saw it from the beginning with Meghan Markle. I saw it from day one when she was first publicly out there as his girlfriend. I said, this woman has the Jezebel spirit on her. She's going to destroy him, and she's going to weasel her way in, worm her way into the royal family and destroy them too. So I saw it coming.
Whoa.
So he is now getting his just desserts, right? I mean, he has made his bed. He's got to lie in it. You reap what you sow. Yeah. And so I don't feel any sympathy for him whatsoever. He chose to marry a toxic nightmare when his brother and the rest of his family were trying to delicately warn him about her. He went ahead with it anyway, disavowed his family, threw them under the bus on Netflix, in Spare, constantly, and they're still doing it. And they won't listen to advice. They won't back down. The rumors are that the marriage is on the rocks. I have no idea. But the fact he outed himself in People magazine, I mean, Dan, you know.
You couldn't make this up. You couldn't make this up.
I mean, he's part of the crown, and he's sitting there, on his
Emailing
iPhone,
People
emailing
magazine.
some rando editor at People magazine. How far he has fallen.
Yeah, it's pathetic. It's embarrassing. And when I read you this piece, Monica, do prepare to cringe. You may need a sick bucket nearby. Okay, so this is what Harry got out of this email. After years of self-reflection, chronicled in his best-selling memoir, Spare, the Duke of Sussex is focused on enjoying life with wife Meghan Markle and their children. But above all, Prince Harry's priority remains fatherhood. In an exclusive email to People, Harry says, "The best gift I've ever been given is without a doubt my kids. I enjoy watching them grow up every single day and I love being their dad. Though the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are raising Archie and Lilibet out of the spotlight, they have given glimpses into their children's personalities." And look, it goes on and on and on and on. He then reveals that they're going to have a big party. But he says Harry has been reluctant to show his children publicly, not out of a desire to hide them, but to protect their privacy and safety from potential threats. He wants them to lead as normal life as possible without the fear of kidnapping or harm. The friend added, this is the friend, Monica, we're now back to the friend. We know who the friend is. The friend is Prince Harry. As a dad and husband, Harry is determined to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself. So, Monica, he is getting a cover of People magazine talking about protecting his children's privacy while talking about his children in a magazine that is going to run lots of pictures of his children. I mean, this is just nuts.
Are we getting pictures of the kids? Because do they exist?
Do they exist?
Nobody has seen those kids. Look, Meghan Markle has played Prince Harry like a Stradivarius. And I'm sorry that Prince Harry lost his mother in such a tragic way, but he is emotionally stunted, right? He's got emotional arrested development from the moment that his mother died in that car crash in Paris. He has not matured one bit. He needs a lot of help. But Meghan Markle saw an easy mark with Prince Harry. She saw that he was vulnerable. She studied him. She studied Princess Diana. She studied the royal family, and she knew exactly how to get in there and how to play his psyche. She dresses oftentimes like Princess Diana. It makes
just at the weekend.
Sick. Right. I mean, as a huge fan of Princess Diana, this makes me sick. She's a psychopath. All right. Meghan Markle is a psycho, and she has played him. Oh, you have to protect me, knowing that Prince Harry carries all of this guilt from being a little boy, not being able to protect his mother. That's what he believes, that he wasn't there to protect his mother.
Now, Monica, he's turning 40 on Sunday.
I know.
At some point, we have to say, don't we? You're a bloke who has had more privileges and advantages than virtually anyone in the entire world. And all of us go through our tragedies in life. And I'm sorry, I just cannot anymore accept that his ticket to treating everyone like a piece of dirt, including his own father battling cancer, including his own sister-in-law battling cancer, is because he lost his mother 25 years ago. I think Princess Diana would be ashamed of the way Harry was acting now. I really do. And I know that is a tough thing to say, but remember, her number one priority in life, Monica, was making sure that he was there for William.
Yes, no, exactly. And the fact he's carrying around all of this resentment for the last 35 years and hasn't resolved it, and obviously hasn't gotten the help that he needs, is really pathetic. But, you mentioned the Prince and Princess of Wales. Don't forget his grandmother. He made her last year of misery while she was dying.
Yes.
His grandfather, Prince Philip, was on his deathbed, and they're talking to Oprah and all of this stuff. And now emailing People magazine, right, from God knows where, Montecito or wherever. I mean, I think the whole world is like, stop talking. Meghan and Harry, stop talking. Stop bemoaning your lot in life. Stop trying to tell us that you're full of joy. You're entering your joy chapter. Nobody believes it. Why don't you just shut up, go back to your home, raise your children, and get your crap together? How about that? Okay. Yep. And then what? Just lay low for 10 years and then maybe come back, and maybe your brother might have some mercy on you, although I doubt it.
Yeah, no, indeed. Indeed. Oh my goodness, Monica. You are brilliant. You are absolutely brilliant. Such a pleasure to have you back on Outspoken today, and I hope to speak to you very soon.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is, of course, Monica Crowley, host of the brilliant Monica Crowley podcast, which is available on Rumble. Obviously, I knew her as a big star of Fox News too, but she was also, sometimes people forget this, former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the Trump administration. Now, it's time for The Outsider. And Father Calvin Robinson joins me from his new perch in the US of A. And of course, he is going to be with us every week, still talking about UK politics. But Calvin, Father Calvin, did you manage to get there okay? You're safely ensconced in America. I'm jealous, by the way.
Hi, Dan. Yes, I feel a lot better now. There's a rifle just over there. I'm very much safer.
So you're already embracing the Second Amendment, and for the next 45 minutes, we will embrace the First Amendment, Calvin. Okay, but breaking right now, Nigel Farage has finally brought the issue of two-tier policing to the House of Commons in an extraordinary exchange between himself and the Prime Minister at PMQs today. But I want you to watch this and specifically look and listen to the reaction from the Labour benches who somehow don't believe that this is even something appropriate to ask about. Watch.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we witnessed some extraordinary celebratory scenes outside Britain's prisons where, in some cases, serious career criminals were released. And this to make way for, yes, rioters, but equally those who've said unpleasant things on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. Does the Prime Minister understand? There is a growing feeling of anger in this country that we are living through two-tier policing and a two-tier justice system.
I'm angry to be put in a position of having to release people who should be in prison because the last government broke the prison system. And the Prime Minister was repeatedly warned. He had his own release scheme. He was repeatedly warned that he had to adopt the scheme that we put in place. The former Justice Minister said if we don't do it, we'll have to get down on our knees and pray. The police chiefs made it absolutely clear in a letter to him before the election that he needed to take action, saying that they wouldn't be able to discharge their duties and saying the risk was loss of an ability to detain suspects. That means, Mr. Speaker, an inability to arrest people committing offences. That's how bad it was. And they warned the Leader of the Opposition that further delays until after the general election will increase the risk significantly. What did he do? He delayed and increased the risks.
Nigel Farage.
So Slippery Starmer, Two Tier Keir didn't answer the question, but Father Calvin, my opinion is that today Nigel Farage showed that he has the moral authority to be the new leader of the opposition. Because remember, the Conservative Party have not raised the issue of two-tier policing once. Not once.
I mean, in all but name, Farage is the leader of the opposition at this moment in time. He's asking the questions that people want asked, and that's important. But it was fascinating to me seeing the Labour front benches. So you've got Lisa Nandy there. How dare you ask us a question like that, highlighting our hypocrisy. You've got Sir Keir Starmer, who still seems to think he is the leader of the opposition. He still keeps calling Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister. And not only that, he's blaming the Conservative government for everything. That's going to get so old so quick. Take some responsibility. This is a Labour policy. They are choosing to release violent criminals early in order to make room for Facebook messages and people who post things on Twitter that are classed as misinformation. They need to own it. If that's what they want to do, fine. That's on them. They can't keep blaming the Conservatives for everything. And when Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, stands at the dispatch box and keeps calling the leader of the opposition the Prime Minister, it's just cringe. Know who you are. Know who you're talking to.
But Calvin, he literally will not discuss these issues. He will not discuss two-tier policing. He will not discuss the invasion of our southern border. He will not discuss the failure of mass immigration and multiculturalism? And how long can he go on, Calvin? Simply trying to tell the silenced majority that you need to shut up or otherwise you're a far-right racist, which is genuinely his strategy.
Well, I mean, he's clearly looking after his vote base. He let out, 1,700 prisoners this week. And one of them was in the paper saying, I'm a Labour voter for life now. Well, of course you are.
And he doesn't give a damn about the pensioners, does he? Because they tend to vote Conservative.
Doesn't give a damn about all ordinary, normal, working Brits. He cares about the criminals. He cares about the illegal immigrants. He cares about the demographics that are actually harming British people because they are the ones that will vote for Labour in the end. He's building a vote base so that Labour will be in power in perpetuity. They are never going to be out in this case. The Conservative government aren't standing up to them. Labour are doing whatever they want, running roughshod. The only voice of opposition that we're hearing at the moment is coming from Reform. Thankfully, Farage has the kahunas to stand up there and say what needs to be said. But why won't Labour answer the question when they are asked about it? Why will they not say, yes, we are letting prisoners out because we want to clamp down on free speech. We don't like what the British people are saying on Facebook and Twitter. We want to stop it. Like, own your policies. And they got in power because they said we would, one of the reasons that they said we will not cut down on pensions. We will not affect pensions. We will not affect the funding for elderly people's bills, and so that they can afford to heat their homes. And they've gone back on all of these things. And essentially, they're making it very, very difficult. This is going to be a horrible winter for the elderly and the vulnerable who cannot afford to heat their homes as it is, because the Labour government are going to make it even more financially risky for them to do so.
Yeah, they lied, didn't they? That is the most shocking thing. They lied. And Colin Brazier, our old colleague at GB News, very good man, speaking of the Farage situation, he posted on X, there is an inverse relationship between the volume of Labour heckling directed at Nigel Farage and the validity of his interventions. It's increasingly obvious he's there to ask the awkward questions our political establishment would rather stayed unput. And I love Colin because he always sums things up so articulately. But he's right, isn't he, Calvin? That is what Farage's job is, because otherwise we would go on for months and months and months and no one would raise two-tier policing in the House. So sure, Farage is going to be heckled, but he doesn't care. He was heckled for years and years and years over Brexit.
I'd go further to say he actually enjoys it. I think he thrives in that environment. He likes when he's the bad guy, the pantomime villain. But I find it interesting that, I love Colin Brazier as well. I think he's a good man. But I find it interesting the language that's being used there, not just by Colin, but also by Farage. Farage tweeted out this week something about the establishment MPs, and I think he calls them the establishment MPs. But Farage is now part of the establishment. He is an MP in the House of Parliament. And so I think he's going to have to find some new language to address these people who he's opposing. But the question is fundamental because so many people are asking this question every day. Two-tier Keir has been trending for months now. And so when no one else is asking that question about two-tier policing, two-tier justice system, two-tier prime minister in our House of Parliament, when no one else is asking it, only Nigel Farage is asking that question, and he's getting heckled and booed down. It shows that the Labour Party are so out of touch with ordinary working class British people, because this is what we want to know. We want to know, why is there a two-tier system? Why are you locking up my granny for tweeting something and letting out the rapist over there for an early release?
Well, indeed. And actually, I wanted to show you a post on X by one of my followers, really, really good person on X, Lou Bug Windsor, who wrote, Lisa Nandy there, shaking her gormless head. She was part of the Refugees Welcome Brigade until they started making trouble around hotels in her own constituency. Then she wanted them out. Those same illegals will have been dispersed elsewhere. Bunch of hypocrites, because of course there's now Operation Scatter, Calvin, which means actually we're just going to have illegal migrants up and down the country everywhere. But she is right to point out that hypocrisy, isn't she?
Absolutely, but they're not all open with their hypocrisy. At least Lisa Nandy's hypocrisy is open for all to see. When Angela Rayner was accosted by the hostile illegal immigrants, she tried to blame it on anything else but them being illegal immigrants. And certainly when it was Mohammedans after her, because she's a woman, she painted it, it's because they're men. So people don't always highlight the hypocrisy in the same way that Lisa Nandy does. But the Labour Party will see more of this from them. As the people that they've brought in are harming our society, will eventually turn to them. We'll see more of this doubling down. But what's interesting is that this problem can be solved. I know you had Callum Smiles on your show, what was it, last week, talking about he's been in France, patrolling the border himself, managed to stop a boat just like that. If we had politicians with the will and actually got the resources, whether it's us or France, it can be done. So there's no excuse.
But they simply don't have the will, do they? I don't believe they want to stop the boat. Because if they did, there's so much they would be able to do.
I genuinely think both sides want the boats to continue. I think France wants the boats to continue to get them out of their country. I think the United Kingdom wants the boats to continue because the Labour Party are relying on these people to vote for them eventually. And so they're building up that vote base.
And also a cheap Labour base.
Absolutely, a massively cheap Labour base.
As in Labour with a small C, small L.
Yeah, this is what the metropolitan liberal elites like. This is what the Islington elites like. They want someone to be their barista. They want someone to do their laundry and their cleaning. They want a servitude class. They want servants, essentially. And so they want cheap foreign labour. And most of the time, they're actually willing to admit that. They say things like, who's going to pick our fruit if we leave the European Union? Yeah, pick your own fruit.
Who's going to deliver your takeaway? Because we know lots of these people are working in Turkish barbers and are working as Deliveroo drivers. And again, it is only Reform UK that is calling out this black economy. By the way, they're the illegals that we probably need to worry about less, Calvin, although it's still very concerning because, of course, the others are involved in criminal activity. They're part of criminal gangs. They are dealing drugs. They're part of county lines. They are plotting terrorist attacks. I mean, this is really serious stuff. Not to mention, by the way, all of the prostitution rings that they're introducing into the country. So why do we think things are becoming so unsafe? It is because we continue to import people who we do not know about, who are driving huge crime waves in this country.
And these things are all linked. So your Turkish barbers, your Afghanistan candy shops, all these cash-in-hand services where the money is being laundered, and they're linked to gangs, they're linked to criminal activity, the Albanian gangsters, all of these, we know that they exist. We know they exist because they're so common on pretty much every high street in every city, yet nothing happens about it. They're not clamped down upon because the establishment keep them. Why do they keep them going? I've never figured this out. We see down Oxford Street, one of the most expensive streets in the city, well, in the country actually, and they've got American sweet shop after American sweet shop after American sweet shop, and we know these Afghanistan gangsters. We know they're people smugglers, and we know they are money launderers, and the police know that. So who is letting them get away with it, and why are they still there?
Very good question. Another very good question, Calvin, is how is the corrupted and I think increasingly evil British MSM dealing with Labour, a party that they backed so strongly, betraying pensioners, betraying the working classes? And one of the most malignant forces in the British MSM is a woman called Carol Vorderman. And very shortly, in just 1 minute, I'll be showing you how she has reacted to this situation. Remember, she wanted this government and she will not hold them accountable. So don't go anywhere because Calvin Robinson is back in just 1 minute. But first, what's so important about being independent is I only tell you about products that I use, truly believe in, and think can improve your life. One of those products is Verso. When I decided to prioritize my health, staying fit and sharp, because I wanted to live a busy and engaged life, I realized that it will only get me so far. Scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I was looking for a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing, but was backed up by solid evidence. So that's why I use Cellbean by Verso. It has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels, which is the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now. Right at the start of my day, it's been genuinely transformative. Fasting is easier. I've lost fat. I'm eating less too. And the team at Verso tell me that is due to its blood sugar regulating effects, which lead to fewer cravings. Sleeping better, waking up with more energy, feeling so much happier too. This product has taken years off my life and I would love you to experience the same thing. Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you're getting what you paid for. And today, there's an amazing offer. If you head right now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. All you need to do is use the coupon code outspoken. So I'm going to put the link in our YouTube and Rumble description, but to repeat, it's buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken. But now back to the show, and Carol Vorderman has revealed that she wants Slippery Starmer to apologise for betraying pensioners by taking away their winter fuel allowance. Now remember, this is the increasingly deranged woman who insisted that everyone must vote for Starmer because he would all of a sudden be leading a completely clean administration where she would no longer have to call out the sort of corruptions and betrayals and lies that she believed happened so often under a Tory administration. Well, how funny to see what happens when the tables are turned. Here she is, speaking to her friends.
I don't understand why they've done it. I do understand why you wouldn't pay the wealthy pensioners, but to go from, I'll be one of those in 2 years' time. So I wouldn't need the winter fuel allowance payment. But to go from 12 million to less than 2 million pensioners receiving it is just way too low. And I'm shocked by it because they could raise that money in so many other ways, including, for instance, private equity managers. All of this is kind of in the book, really. So, for instance, a few years ago, in one tax year, 255 private equity managers earned, very much in inverted commas, £2.7 billion between them. And they didn't pay 45% tax, as every employee who's earning a decent amount of money would pay. They have a special arrangement with HMRC at 28%. Now that could instantly generate another 600-700 million.
So what do you think Keir Starmer should do now? Right, we've seen.
Well,
yes,
I think he should apologise.
You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do, genuinely.
What's that going to do, Calvin? What's an apology going to do? That woman is the biggest hypocrite in the country. And I put her alongside Gary Lineker and James O'Brien as malignant forces in the mainstream media who have now become client journalists and propagandists for this completely morally reprehensible government, despite everything that they claimed they really cared about. Actually, Calvin, all they wanted was their lads in power. And now that they've got that power, they will do anything to keep them in power.
Yeah, Carol Vorderman's a strange one because she's clearly a morally reprehensible person supporting morally reprehensible politicians. But now she's seen that they cannot even stick to their word and be morally reprehensible in the way that she would like. And so she's asking them to apologise. She should be the one apologising. She has been pretty much campaigning for them non-stop for the last few years. So it's down to people like her that they are actually in power. Unfortunately, she needs to take some responsibility for that. It's not just her, Andrew Marr was on Question Time and praising how great this Labour government's going to be. So many of the mainstream media, so-called journalists, were supporting and encouraging and promoting and campaigning for the Labour Party. And now they're saying, actually, these are just bad politicians, low calibre, low IQ, and not getting much done. And the things they are getting done are actually hurting the country rather than helping. All these weird lefty journalists seem to have been dreaming of a utopia or some kind of ideal country if Labour got into power. Now Labour in power, they're like, oh wait, where's this utopia? It's insane that they seem to have actually believed their own hype.
Yeah, indeed. And the thing is, Calvin, this is all their fault because they never challenged Starmer in the run-up to the election. They never got him to accurately... Yeah, they did. They did. And they knew full well that he hadn't outlined any plans. They effectively gave the guy a blank check to now come and ruin the country. And Calvin, I was very upset by a message on X or a post on X, a public post I received from one of our Outspoken viewers, Susan Matthews. And this is how she described the situation. I really do think it's worth listening to. This is about the winter fuel payment being taken away from pensioners. She wrote, I am an ex-nurse and now wheelchair-bound pensioner who runs a helpline for disabled people and have many pensioners to listen to, and their stories are heartbreaking. Without exception, this feels like a cull. Survival of the fittest. Now planning my funeral. I mean, firstly, Calvin, it's incredibly upsetting. And it's so upsetting that our greatest generation is being treated this way anyway, given that some of these folk are veterans of World War II. But what do you make of what she says about this starting to feel like the survival of the fittest and some sort of cull by the government?
It's absolutely awful. So you and I have been talking for a number of weeks now about how we feel, how our generation feels, disenfranchised, and there's a malaise over the country, and it's a negative vibe. But I haven't really considered that much how the older generation feels. And to hear Susan's own words saying how she feels that there's a survival of the fittest, and she's struggling to prepare for her own funeral now, and it's almost. It's end times of someone's own life. When they're coming to the end of their life, they should be able to relax a bit more. They've contributed their entire working career for paying off taxes and contributing to the system. They should be able to dial it down a bit. Their stress level should not be increased. They shouldn't be anxious about heating their own homes, for goodness sake. I don't understand it, because there is enough money. How many billions are we sending to the Ukraine every year? In fact, the government has confirmed they will continue to do so indefinitely. So we're sending
Calvin,
money
another
abroad.
£600 million. Just another blank check sent to Ukraine. And I'm sorry, Calvin, I can no longer just sit back and watch us literally refuse to heat the homes of World War II veterans while sending another £600 million to the corrupt regime in Ukraine. This war has to end. And I know some people don't want to hear that, Calvin. But look at Trump last night. I completely agree with him. Actually, we just need to stop it. We need to stop the bloodshed. But we also need to stop the absolute damage that this is reaping on the international economy, and especially here in the UK, where we write blank check after blank check. 600 million, just like that. No questions. No debate about it. The mainstream media just think this is not even something that we should discuss.
It's not like we've got so much money we can afford to just splash it around. We're not flush. We're taking money from pensioners, for goodness sake, so they can no longer heat their homes, and then giving it to foreigners who are corrupt. What is that about? I know you'll probably get to Trump later, but on the Ukraine thing, that was interesting in that they were really trying to push him to be pro-war. He's like, I'm not pro-war. I'm not taking a side in this. The fighting has to end. The war has to end. The corruption has to end. It's another money laundering scheme. We see billions of pounds go from the West into the Ukraine and to companies like BlackRock, who are involved in the war and are supposedly involved in the rebuilding of Ukraine. Where does it go from there? Which politicians benefit from that? I'd love to see the Biden's bank balance, for example. It's all a massive money laundering scheme. It's massively corrupt. It's a proxy war that we are paying for, not just us, our elderly people are paying for, potentially with their lives this winter.
And the thing is, Calvin, the left, and especially the likes of David Lammy, are completely hypocritical when it comes to the issue of Ukraine. So they speak incessantly about the need for a ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Funny that.
Now, actually, I want that war to end as well. I want all wars to end. But they never speak of a ceasefire in Ukraine. And if you have this type of conversation, they will immediately label, and the mainstream media will immediately label you some sort of apologist for Putin, which is clearly not the case. So the hypocrisy is off the scale. How can Labour be throwing Israel under the bus in the way that it is, while at the same time writing blank checks for Ukraine and not at all suggesting that we should be trying to reach a ceasefire between Putin and Zelensky?
So by their own logic, if saying there should be a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia makes you a Putin apologist, surely that when they're asking for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, that makes them a Hamas apologist. That makes these people terrorist sympathizers. Surely they could see the error in their own hypocrisy, and the logic that falls apart because they are not sticking to one set of principles, because they believe one thing about one set of people, another thing about another set of people. They're not open with it. They're not honest about it. And that's the problem. All of these wars have to stop. And all of our intervention in these wars has to stop. We have to stop putting money into foreign affairs. We've got to sort the problems out at home. Our veterans need taken care of. Our vulnerable need taken care of. Our elderly need taken care of. We just stop killing unborn babies. There are so many issues we need to take care of at home before we can splash money about elsewhere.
Well, the bigger problem is, Calvin, as well, is that we have driven our own defense into the ground in order to pay for the war in Ukraine. And actually, there is a need for us to defend the homeland. I mean, look, it's September 11th. It's 9/11. It's the anniversary of 9/11. There are serious Islamist threats, and it is absolutely essential that we spend that money to protect ourselves. And we cannot keep writing blank checks. I just find it so infuriating, Calvin, that £600 million just gone today with no debate, no discussion, no accountability, no knowledge of actually where it's going to, what it's going to do. Is this money being used appropriately? But I don't believe it is. I just do not believe it is.
It's so interesting because even the lefty media, and so all of the media was on the same page with this before the Ukraine/Russia war. All of them said the Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe and one of the most corrupt countries in the world. So it was infamous for its corruption. Now, all of a sudden, we are promoting the Ukraine as the heroes of the West and just throwing billions and billions of pounds, I think it's $3 billion a year, right, at this country that is, up until 5 minutes ago, the most corrupt country. And somehow we expect that money to go to the war effort. Somehow we expect that money to help, innocent civilians on both sides on the ground. I don't think that's the case. I think we see very clearly certain politicians getting ridiculously rich from this. And not just politicians, but the establishment of the elite in general, at our expense.
I know. It is a huge concern, isn't it? And the problem is, if you're saying that you literally cannot afford to allow World War II veterans to heat their home, then that's when you have to seriously start thinking about what we are spending around the world. And I wanted to show you, given we've been speaking about Nigel Farage today, he's obviously doing some really interesting things on social media with his Reform UK colleagues, and this was their take on the protest vote yesterday.
So it's a big day. Apart from the King's speech, the biggest day since we've been here, it's the vote on the cutting from 10 million people of the winter fuel allowance, and the Daily Express have organised a big get-together of all the MPs that intend to vote against it. I've got, in Clacton, a 99-year-old constituent, Jim O'Dwyer, did over 30 missions as Tail End Charlie on Lancaster bombers during the war, has paid into the tax system for his whole working life, and because he's got a small pension, his winter fuel allowance is being cut. He himself says this is an absolute disgrace after all our generation have done for this country. So it's a really big, strong, emotive issue.
Shocking day, evil policy by this government, removing the winter fuel allowance from people like my constituents, Elizabeth Stone, tears, genuinely fearful about whether she'll see the end of this winter. 99-year-old war veterans also furious, terrified. It's an outrage, it's shameful, it's evil. That's why hundreds of MPs are here.
And Calvin, I do think it is incredible what Reform UK are showing that you can do with just 5 MPs. That's all they have, but it doesn't matter because they're using the independent media, they're using social media, and I think they're proving that they will be a major force, even though they have such a tiny number of MPs compared to the Liberal Democrats or the Conservative Party, which we know is completely unfair, given they received more votes than the Lib Dems.
Yeah, what they're showing is that times are changing and you can have a big impact in different ways. And that's important because as we go forward to the next election, hopefully more people will stand. We'll have more independent MPs who are standing for their local area, actually representing constituents. And they'll see that with a bit of social media influence, they can make a big difference in their area too. We don't need these two big parties to tell us what to do anymore. We don't need to abide by the uni party of Labour and the Conservatives, both of whom have not helped us in any way, shape or form for the last 2 decades. So yes, Reform are making a bit of an impact now, but hopefully many others will too. I would love to see David Curtin's Heritage Party have a bit of a foothold in Parliament. I'd love especially to see the UKIP party get somewhere in there, and even Lawrence Fox's Reclaim party. It would be good to see elements of the right getting some influence and holding the powers that be to account in a way that Nigel Farage has been this week, because we need more of that. We need the questions asked that people are asking on Twitter that the parliamentarians are afraid of. Let's get more ordinary folk in that house, tearing that down and draining the blaming swamp.
And surely now is the time to talk about uniting the right, but also, Calvin, uniting the right with the desire to introduce proportional representation, because actually that is the only thing that will finally stop the march of the uni party that has let us down so significantly. But look, stand by, Father Calvin Robinson. Lots more to come, including why you're taking criminal action against a hard leftist academic. This is a fascinating case, and we'll talk about it very soon in the Uncancelled After Show, because you know it's very important to me that we have a safe space not patrolled by big tech, where censorship and control runs deep. So that's why we have www.outspoken.live, our membership section, where you will get half an hour of extra content every day. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble, we move to our own platform to continue our conversation in the Uncancelled After Show. All you have to do is sign up at www.outspoken.live. We're back live, though, every weekday at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. See you on the after show in just one moment with more from Father Calvin.